Ari, welcome to the JPP. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, Brother David. Good to have you. Good to be on board.
Okay, so as I like to ask all my guests, kickoff question is please share with our audience who you are in your own words.
My name is Ari. I've been living in Israel for the brunt of my life. I spend much of my time as a rocket scientist. I don't spend enough of my time learning Torah, which is just what I think we're here for, teaching Torah. If you were to ask me what I try to do, I try to look at life as a cosmic Where's Waldo game and try to find God. And everything I do, I look for Kadosh Baruch Hu. And doing what I do, it gives me certain insights that other people don't have. You can see when you see a bullet hitting a bullet, or when you sneak in a missile into a very, very small space. You see, well, oh my gosh, there's a Kadosh Baruch Hu. The fact that these things are working so wonderfully, there's a Kadosh Baruch Hu. It's a bracha, it's a blessing to be doing what I'm doing.
I happen to remember, so we spent the Shabbos together on the Upper West Side. It was about a decade ago, if not more. And I remember you sharing that you wake up extraordinarily early. Maybe you don't go to sleep, but I remember you saying that you study Torah very early every morning for a substantial amount of time.
I do. That's the best time. Some people say, early to bed, early to rise. A good friend of mine said that, as famous Rabbi Ben Franklin, and that's the best time for learning. The best time for introspection is in the morning. I don't get up as early as I used to. I still get up quite early, and I don't know, try to get my 6 hours of sleep a night.
You still learn Yerushalmi? Do I remember that correctly, or am I?
I do. Wow, that's great. I just made a siyum on it on Sukkot. My parents were here over Sukkot, and I made a siyum on the Yerushalmi, and I've started again. I'm in Masechet Demai already.
A lot of the world is catching up. I actually started Yerushalmi this cycle too. It's become a lot more popular, a lot more in vogue. But you were doing it a while ago, if I'm not mistaken. Well, obviously,
yeah. I mean, what's made it that much easier is the fact that there's a Schottenstein now, and I owe my Yerushalmi to Jay Schottenstein. I mean, without him, there's Rav Chaim Kanievsky has a very, very nice parish on it, and that's good for what he's written on, but he hasn't written on everything. And without Schottenstein, I mean, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Okay, cool, amazing. So tell us a little bit. Let's go back. I guess you grew up in the States, correct?
I did. I grew up in upstate New York. I went to Yeshiva High School in Toronto. And when I was 18, I came on aliya. I didn't come on aliya. I came to study for a year in yeshiva, which turned into 2 years, which turned into a much longer stay because I fell in love with a woman whose parents decided to come on aliyah. And 8 children and 11 grandchildren later, we're still going out. We're going to get married one day.
Where in upstate New York did you grow up?
I came from a place called Binghamton, New York.
Sure, it's well known. Okay.
I mean, it's right now. It has a very, very large Chabad house, a Chabad community that did not exist when we were there. When we were there, there was a small community led by Rabbi Groner, who's actually famous because of his son. Eli Groner was the head of Prime Minister Netanyahu's office at one time, not so long ago.
Yeah, I know that. It's a big name in Chabad, and I hear that. Interesting.
The Slonim House.
Yeah. Why? So why were you in Binghamton? Your dad was a professor or something?
Yeah, my dad was. He was working at IBM, and when I left to come to Israel, they left Binghamton to go to Montreal. He became a professor, and Binghamton pretty much imploded. Most of the people have left. Unfortunate. That community was a nice, vibrant, youngish community. I think the word "young" is really subject to a certain amount of stretching as I get older, and but it was a young community at the time, and it's really gone the way it's left. It is no more.
They had something, and back in the day when I was at Yeshiva University, they had something called Torah Tours, and if I'm not mistaken, I spent like a Shabbos. I think there was a Morel family. Does that make sense?
Yes,
in Binghamton, and we spent the Shabbos there. I remember a little bit vaguely, got a little exposure to some of it was a lot of professors. I remember at least, but this goes back. This is at least 35 years ago. So
a lot of them worked in the university in Binghamton, which was at the time SUNY, and some of them worked in Cornell because Ithaca's only about an hour and a half away. Yeah, they went there and back. Great community, great times.
So Ari, you didn't come back to the States like when you went to Kerem Yavneh, that was it? You never came back?
That was it. I came back for a couple of months to gather my stuff, and I went back to Israel, and then I went to Technion.
You were
People
you didn't do
call
I say you didn't do yeshiva Hesder in the sense that you were
No,
well,
I
in
didn't do
Israel, you were
Hesder.
right. You were
In,
chutzner.
in retrospect, it would have been a good idea to have done Hesder, but I ended up doing Army after during the middle of my Technion foray. I did something called Shlaf Bed at the time. It was 4 months for people that were Olim Chadashim that were above 24 and had one child. And it would have been better to do it before I was married. Doing Army when you're married is it's an issue.
I can't imagine. I can only imagine. So what did you do in those 4 months? What was your focus in those 4 months?
Oh, you would think this rocket scientist guy's doing something scientific. No, I was not. At the time, it was the beginning of the first Intifada. And there were a lot of political prisoners in jails. And at the time, your standard Israeli military policeman had a double-digit IQ if you're lucky, and it wasn't the best people that went, the best and the brightest that went to the military police, and they were people that were manning jails who simply could not deal with these Palestinian prisoners, because these Palestinian prisoners were not just vagrants and lawbreakers. These were political prisoners. These were intelligent people. So what they did was when I was drafted, anybody who was in my position, 24 and up, and had a child, anybody who had any kind of academic degree, boom, they went to the military police. And I spent my 4 months in jail duty, and I did miluim after that, like 45 days a year until we had our 6th kid.
Wow,
doing the same thing.
And you were living up north the entire time, like when you first got married, or no? Probably not.
Yeah, we lived in the north because Technion was in the north, so we lived in Haifa for a while. My wife studied in Bar Ilan, so we lived near the bus station, the bottom of the mountain in Haifa. I'd go up, take an hour bus ride up to Technion, and she'd take an hour and a half bus ride down to Bar Ilan. For a couple of months, we lived in Bnei Brak, so that my wife was pregnant in advanced pregnancy. She had a baby, moved back up, and we've been in the north ever since. We live in holiday country in Israel.
Interesting. What was the draw? I mean, it sounds like it was more convenience, or there was more than that.
No. I mean, again, looking backwards in retrospect, it was a great move. But we moved here for utilitarian purposes completely. We wanted to be near Technion, and then I got a job right after Technion. I got a job at Rafael, and I've been there ever since. I mean, I've been there since 1991.
You always anticipate when you were doing your time in the Technion? It would sound like it was an elongated period of time. Did you anticipate doing exactly what you're doing, or you were thinking?
I anticipated doing the exact opposite. I got my degree. My master's degree was in biomedical engineering. Teaching computers how to move a person's leg in a way that mimics walking. I mean, now I'm on the other side. Now I'm on the giving end. I mean, I'm on the missile end. I'm the people that are unfortunately responsible for people that don't walk very well. So I'm doing the exact opposite of what I was doing in Technion.
Fascinating. So Iron Dome, because I think I've heard you present on Iron Dome right at APAC conferences, but you're saying you, in essence, contrary to Iron Dome on some level. I mean, not the ones firing on Iron Dome, but I'm saying, like, it sounds like that's what you said. If I understood you correctly.
With missiles, it's always better to give than to receive. I've worked on the giving end. I've worked on the receiving end. Now I happen to be working on the giving end. But I spent a long time on the receiving end. It's much easier to preach Iron Dome than it is to preach a weapon that can travel 30 kilometers and then enter and take out the person who's going to be firing the next rocket at you. That's much more difficult to present. It's always touchy-feely. We're protecting our citizens. You don't win wars by protecting your citizens. You protect wars by imposing your will. It's hard to talk about, but it is what it is.
This technology that you work on is just for Israel or for other countries as well?
No, we were talking beforehand. I was just in Australia working on marketing the system to them. This is what I'm working on now currently. It's called the Spike family. We sell that to more than 40 countries around the world.
Oh wow. Okay.
It's like Baskin Robbins. It's all over the place. It's ubiquitous.
Is this hard to pitch to people? Is it I mean, what's the
Not anymore. Not after Mr. Putin went over and entered the Ukraine. People are banging down on our doors. I mean, the Europeans are banging on our doors, and the Asians are worried about the Chinese, and everybody's worried. It is unfortunately, it's a great environment to be selling weapons right now.
It's a boon for business. I hear.
We always talk about Rafael. Each year we have our marketeer of the year, and last year's marketeer of the year was Vladimir Putin, because there is no one who has done more to increase our sales than Mr. Putin.
Fascinating. I assume Rafael has competitors, correct? I mean, you're not the only show in town.
Yeah, companies that are not nearly as good and are much more expensive. But yes, that sound like marketing. It was. We have
cool. You're entitled. It's your platform.
Competitors around the world, competitors in the U.S. as well. I've actually had the pleasure of working together with them. We collaborative development, one of the programs I was working on. So I was managing, as it were, Raytheon, which is a small American company. And it's interesting to see the way they do business and the way we do business and the way we develop and the way they develop. By us, there's a sense of urgency when we develop weapons, because by us, we're getting fired on, and we're in fighting wars significantly more than the Americans are. Certain countries have the ability to choose their wars. We have our wars foisted upon us, and we have to be able to win them. It's my sons that are going into battle. I need to be able to protect them. I need to give them the weapons that they need in order to do what they need to do as efficiently, as quickly as possible. It's very, very visceral here.
I hear that 100%. What does it cost, just for example, that what you're pitching right now to the Australians? Like, what does it cost to buy one of these weapons?
Well, this is a weapon that flies about 5.5 kilometers, and it'll go through a tank like a hot knife through butter, or a window, and then explode on the inside. And it costs an order of $100K, a bit more, $100,000 US.
I would have thought a lot more. Okay, pretty cost efficient.
David, for you, I'm willing to make a deal.
Tell me, you probably have so many incredible experiences, cool experiences, eye-opening experience. What are one or two of kind of just wow experiences that you've had in your professional career?
Wow, I'll give you an example. See, when you do what we do and you're in it in a day-to-day basis, you don't see what you're doing as anything special. It's just another day at the office. But when we had a flight test about 2 years ago with another company who doesn't do missiles. They do these vehicles that carry our missiles, and we wanted to be able to fly out and hit the top of a building that we couldn't see when we took the shot. And you see the missile goes up, and the missile's broadcasting back a picture to the guy who's operating it, and we were locked on the front of the building because that's all we could see when we launched it. But then the missile flies up, and we moved our lock point to the top of the building. We came in and boom, took out the building. And the people that were working in the truck, they looked at me and they said, "That didn't just happen. How did you do that? That's amazing." And what amazed me was, I didn't think it was amazing anymore. What's amazing is when you can look at Iron Dome shooting down 30, 40, 50 bad guys at the same time over the skies of Tel Aviv, and you think, "Oh, that's interesting. Ooh, that one didn't work so well." And you don't even see the whole amazing thing, the amazing experiences going on. You become newer to it. That's what's amazing to me.
Interesting. I mean, you're saying what's amazing is that you could be a person who's so close to it could be desensitized to the incredible potency of it. That's what you're saying on some level?
It's exactly what I'm saying. It's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah, wow, wondrous. So I want to ask you a little bit. I've seen you quote, because it's a new personality to me, actually. I saw it recently. I was on the Gush website and I saw a reference to him as well. There's somebody named Minuto that I've noticed that you refer to sometimes in your essays on Parsha. I want to ask you in general just about, I assume that's one of your inspirations, but I'd love to hear just a little bit about, who informs your Torah thinking or your life gestalt, or just how you see the world. Who are some of the people that inspire you and impact your thinking?
Well, one of them is Manito. Manito was Rabbi Yehuda Leon Ashkenazi. He was French, and he came to Israel. He was born in Algeria. He rebuilt the French Jewish community almost single-handedly after World War II, and he has this very healthy way of looking at life and looking at the Torah. He looks at it. He says we have this advantage that the people in the Torah didn't have, is that we know what's going to happen. we know that Avram's going to go to Egypt and is going to come back. And we know that every year Yosef's going to go to Egypt and every year his brothers are going to find him. But no one knew that. And there are trials and tribulations that Am Yisrael underwent that they didn't know was going to happen. And when you look at it that way, you say, holy macaroni, you understand what they went through. You understand the tribulations that they went through. You understand the questions that they asked themselves. And it was never a given. Manitou says it was never a given that Abraham and Yitzchak were going to be the Jewish people that God had imagined. Only after Yaakov comes along and finishes things up, retrospectively, everything gets tied into a knot. That's the amazing thing about Manitou. Someone said of Re'ema Cohen, the Rosh Hashiva of Otniel, he said that Manitou did. He started a shir. Someone gives a shir, you have a sugya, you want to analyze it, you have a point you want to make, you finish your point, you go home. Manitou didn't do that. Manitou had this, you would enter a shir with Manitou, you never knew where you were going to come out. It was deep philosophy. There was a tremendous amount of audience participation, and you never knew where you're going to come out. And at the end, you always came out extremely enlightened. That's one person who
when did he pass away? When did he pass away?
He died in the early 90s.
So you had personal, you attended his classes directly or never?
I didn't. I got turned on to Manitou about 25 years after he died. Accidentally, my wife, it was in 2020 on Pesach, and we were stuck in the house, and my wife ordered some svarim so that I have something to read for Pesach, and happened to be a Sefer of Manitou, and I got so turned on, started giving a shir on and quoting him. It turns out that when I was in Technion, the Rav of the Technion, Rav Eliyahu Zini, is a Talmud of Manitou, and Rav Zini was definitely one of the guiding figures. He shaped the way I look at things. He has a very interesting way of looking at halacha, very interesting way of being posek halacha, a very strong sense of Jewish self, of Jewish pride. I learned a lot from Rav Zini. And
Rav Shagar, is Rav Shagar somebody also who you were?
No. Rav Shagar is actually someone who I never met, but I from what I've learned of Rav Shagar, I prefer Manitou. And Rav Zini, and also obviously Rav Soloveitchik has gone a long way in shaping my life as well. The first I read Lonely Man of Faith when I was 20, and that was the sefer that had the most seminal effect on my life. And the cool thing is that I have two sons that went to yeshiva, both went to Malay Dumim, and both of them became not Hasidim of Rav Soloveitchik, because he didn't have Hasidim, but Talmidim, as it were, of Rav Soloveitchik, and then both of them quote him in English and in Hebrew, and it's really, really cool that we both share this. If I could have dinner with somebody, I'd like to have dinner with the Rav. But you know what? I saw in the questions that you gave me, who gives me inspiration? The people who give me the most inspiration are people that fought in Israel in 1948. This was a country that did not exist. This was Manitou's Abraham and Yitzchak. They didn't know what was going to be tomorrow. They didn't know how the story ends. And these were people, some of them who had just come off the boat from Europe. These were ordinary people doing such extraordinary things. We went to Shar Hagai, and Shar Hagai, they have this park, and in the park they have trucks that were shot out when they tried going up to Jerusalem to bring food to people who were stuck in Jerusalem. And I asked myself, would I have been willing to get in this truck and drive the truck, knowing that there is an excellent chance that I will not come back? And I don't know if I would have, but these people did. And on Yom Ha'atzmaut, we just went to a place where it's called the Ma'arat Palmach, the Palmach cave, and you hear the story about the Palmach and how they defended this place called Mishmar Emek in the middle of nowhere. And I think, my God, would I have been able to do that? And they had to do it, and they did it. And looking back, I mean, I owe my very being to them. I'm being able to sit in Israel and look out my bedroom at ships in the bay. I owe it to these people, and this is they give me constant inspiration.
That's beautiful. Can you talk just a drop about where you live? My guess is a lot of my listeners don't necessarily have a clue If you just give a little vibe of like what the community is like we know.
Yeah, sure.
But I'm just
I
curious.
live in a place called Moreshet. Moreshet is it's a religious yishuv in the Western Galilee, the Western Galilee. There are about 450 families here, but because it's a religious issue, so people here have kids like rabbits, and so there's a couple thousand people here. Out of the 450 families, we were family number 13. We lived in a caravan, not at this site, but about 10 kilometers down the road. And then we built our home up here. And it's a beautiful place. It's a place where people walk around on Shabbos holding Gemaras. It's a place in which everybody eats at everybody else's house. It's a place in which if there's a simcha or God forbid not a simcha, but people pitch in and cook and invite, and it's just it's a lovely place. It's,
what I mean, what is it? I mean, is it are there other communities nearby, or it's kind of like it's kind of sits on its own? I'm just not familiar with the area.
It's in a place called Gush Segev. It's about 30 different yishuvim that are between Haifa in the west, Carmiel in the east, Sina Haria in the north, and again Haifa in the south. And the nearest three yishuvim are all Arab yishuvim. There's Kfar Manda, there's Kaukab Abul Hijja, and there's Iblin. And the cool thing about that was in May of 21, we were locked down for 3 nights. When the sun went down, the zombies came out, and they burnt tires and they threw bricks at cars, and we were essentially locked down because all of the 3 roads that leave out of that exit our yishuv, they all go through Arab towns on the way to Haifa, on the way to Carmiel, on the way to the Krayot. So while we like to think that yes, we live in the Galil and it's quiet here, it's a tinderbox, and it explodes at the drop of a match.
How far is your you work, I assume, in the office as opposed to home, and how far?
Most of the time I work at the office because a lot of what I work in is has a certain amount of classification. Baruch Hashem, I am 7 minutes down the road.
Oh wow, okay, that's very close. Okay.
Yeah, it's very, very cool. My wife, she works at the University of Haifa, and that's much further.
Fascinating. What does your wife do, by the way?
My wife she's a lawyer who got a 2nd degree in informal Jewish education, who got a doctorate in Medrash, specializing in the Cairo Geniza.
Oh wow.
She's also an interesting person to talk to.
Oh, she connected as a wonderful family from Toronto.
Friedberg?
She's connected with that because that's their project, right?
She works with the Friedberg, the collection of the Cairo Geniza. It made it possible for her to work. Yeah.
You might know my cousin, Adam Schwartz. He worked on that for a while also. I don't know
Adam Schwartz. He was with you in KBY.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You're the same year. Are you the same?
Adam and Adina. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So Adina's my first cousin.
What?
All right. We'll have to get
She's Floridian, isn't she?
Over to them. They're lovely people. Really. Very, very.
They are. Wow.
Oh, cool. Okay. Small world. Okay. I know the Friedbergs as well. Beautiful. Okay. So your wife is a little smarter than you are, it sounds like.
A little. Yeah. Well.
She's Australian, you said she's Australian originally?
Canadian. She's Torontonian.
Okay. Oh, that makes sense. Okay. Fascinating. I have so many questions I want to ask you. Okay. Let me ask you this. So you know what, before we even get to that, let's talk a little bit about what's going on in Israel right now, since it's an opportunity. You're here and you're very close to events, and you're talking just now about, you live in essence in an area that, could explode at any moment. So we here in the diaspora here in America watch from afar. Obviously, we care deeply, and we're very passionate. And many of us have family members there, as we just mentioned, and I have even closer family than my cousins. But it's not the same as actually being there and living there day to day. Pesach in particular was a very trying time. We just went through Yom HaZikaron, Yom HaAtzmaut. Just share, if you would, some of your hergation. It's complex, right? It says nothing's simple and nothing's easy. And Eretz Yisrael's nicknames b'Yisurin. Eretz Yisrael is acquired through suffering and trial and tribulation. But I'd love to hear, if somebody with boots on the ground, just some of your thoughts, particularly over the last few weeks.
Well, life in Israel has always been tenuous. We are surrounded by countries who would do us ill. Surrounding those countries are actually countries that we're doing quite well with, particularly the UAE, Bahrain.
By the way, in the context of your work, do you get to interact with some of the Abraham Accord countries, etc.?
Only when I'm flying out and I go through Dubai, because everybody goes through Dubai now. We used to go through Bangkok and Hong Kong, and now we all go through Dubai. The problem with our near neighbors is that there's an infiltration of Iranian influence pretty much everywhere you look. People are very, very worried about Iran and their quest for nuclear hegemony. And what people might not understand is that there is a tremendous amount of Iranian influence in proxies in Gaza, from Hamas to Lebanon to Hezbollah to Syria. I work in another job that I do. I work with US Congressmen on issues that are actually work with Bruce Pearl. Bruce Pearl is a strong supporter of our organization.
The coach of Auburn?
Coach Pearl, yeah, meeting with him next week.
He's a coach. He was a guest on this podcast, actually. He's a good friend.
I know. I looked today to see who your guests were. I noticed it was Bruce. So we bring congressmen to Israel, and we take them around and we show them issues that they may not see elsewhere. And one of the places we always take them is to the Golan Heights to look at Syria, and they are shown exactly where the Syrians are, and much, much closer where Hezbollah is, which is an arm of Iran, the Iranians themselves, and there's a lot, and there's also a tremendous amount of potential for upheaval amongst Israeli Arabs. To the point, May of 21, when I was talking about when the zombies came out, there was a firebombing of a hotel in Akko. My son, by the way, just moved to Akko. He teaches in the Hesder Yeshiva there, and in the hotel was owned and managed by the father of the CEO of Rafael, and he was killed by the firebombing. So it's a forefront war that Iran is waging. They're waging a cyber war as well. People don't hear about that very, very often, but there's a cyber war being waged as well. And everything, you look outside and it's all hunky-dory, but it could change at the drop of a hat. And if it changes, things can go south very, very quickly. And I'll tell you why. Because had you asked me 20 years ago what Israel's biggest problems were, I would have told you that it's energy. We didn't have any energy. We were importing coal from South Africa and from Russia, and that's how we were generating electricity. It was water, which 20 years ago, we were after nearly a decade of drought, which continued pretty much uninhibited until about 3 years ago. And we also had the threat of Syrian tanks coming in from the Golan Heights. You fast forward 20 years, Kadosh Baruch has been very, very good to us. We found natural gas deposits under the floor of the Mediterranean, so we don't have energy problems. We're actually selling natural gas to various countries in Europe. We have mastered the art of desalination. We're actually filling the Kinneret with desalinated water. And the country that formerly known as Syria is now a splinter of many different countries. The problem is that there are now choke points that didn't exist 20 years ago. If you look at Israel's gas rigs in the Mediterranean, if you look at Israel's desalination plants. So a couple of well-placed precision-guided munitions, which Iran is trying desperately to get into Lebanon. They could, on day one of war, we lose cell phone coverage, we lose water, we lose electricity, and we're back in the Stone Age. So while we've been advancing, we become vulnerable in places that we weren't before. To counter this, we're developing a very comprehensive system of missile defense, but there's nothing that's hermetic. So while everything looks really, really good, things can go south very, very quickly. What is important in my eyes is the projection of force. That deterrence is what keeps Israel safe. It's not only our anti-missile shield, which Baruch Hashem works very, very well. It's tested very frequently, but the knowledge of people that would do us ill, that if they strike us, then we will strike back. We have the wherewithal and we have the gumption. These are two things that you need. You can't have one without the other. And as long as we have both, then we will continue to live safely. If we lose one, or if our enemies feel that we've lost one, then the tables will turn very quickly.
I just finished Bibi Netanyahu's biography. I'm not sure if it's something that you read or didn't read. Did you read it?
I haven't read it yet, but it's on my to-read list.
I recommend it highly. It's fascinating. It's actually really interesting. It gave somebody like myself a lot of insight into what, a prime minister deals with. And obviously he probably doesn't even reveal half of the things that go on, but you definitely get a little bit of the vibe of what you're talking about. So in that sense, what do you like? Just tell me, like, you hear about, what happened to the D family during Chol Moed. Like, obviously the response is, anger and pain, but like anything else anything that, I don't know, like when these events keep happening, like, what do you feel like? Is there an understanding that like you can't stop everybody all the time, or is there a frustration that we should be doing more? Like what?
There's a visceral response, like, how could this happen? We must do such and such to prevent this from ever happening again. But if I take a step back and I look at it logically, like you said, Eretz Yisrael can be Surin. It's something that we can never completely prevent. It's going to be something that we will live with for as long as there are people that would do us ill, and even not only on a state-sponsored basis, but the individual person who's driving his car and he sees a couple of soldiers standing at a bus stop, and he decides to turn the car steering wheel hard to the right on the spur of the moment. There's nothing we can do to stop that. Nothing. And it's a horrible thing to think. And my daughter now, she's in the army. And because she wears madim, because she wears the uniform, she has become a valid target. My God, it's my daughter. She's 20 years old. She doesn't do anything to anybody. How can you make her into a target? But that's what you get by living here. It's something that it's horrific. It's something that we can't understand, something that we can't digest. It's something that Kadosh Baruch Hu foists on us, and I say, Kadosh Baruch Hu, please don't give me that nisayon. Please don't give me that nisayon.
Right. I hear we daven every day that Hashem shouldn't bring us lidei nisayon, lo lidei vizayon. Two different things, but it means a lot.
I'll tell you something. I'll tell you something we also say every day, we forget about, is Hashem oz la'moyitain. God gives us courage, and only when God gives us courage and gives us strength, only then Hashem yivarech et amo v'shalom. So in order for us to have a peace, there has to be a strength. We can't show cracks to our enemy, because that just encourages them.
Right. That's I think that's a clear theme that runs through Bibi's his biography that he wrote without, I guess, without knowing to be back, in the seat of power when he wrote it, although maybe he surmised he would be. Do you, there's a debate about, the current, without getting too into the details of the current, tension in Israel about the Supreme Court and the overhaul, etc. Do you agree or disagree with people who say that, that somehow weakens the perception of Israel in the eyes of our neighbors and the eyes of our enemies? Do you have a feeling about that?
Look, I don't think that our neighbors or the people that are looking at Israel need a reason to look at us in any way they so desire. That anything we say and do.
No, but does it undermine that deterrent factor that you were describing? No, you don't think?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. It's orthogonal. It's our own problem. What does hack a huge hole in deterrence is our squabbling and our infighting. And that has a far more serious effect on our deterrence than any kind of legislation on how we do or do not appoint judges. Because if Israel, God forbid, ever goes the way of the wind, it's because we did it to ourselves. Kadosh Baruch Hu will give us the wherewithal to take care of our enemies, but he hasn't given us the wherewithal to take care of ourselves. And Danny Gordis, I read a couple of weeks ago, he said that 74 is a very, very important number, because 74 years was as long as the first the Davidic monarchy lasted, unified, before Rechavam came, and Rechavam and Yeravam split into Yehuda and Israel. And the same thing happened 74 years under the Hasmoneans before they called in the Romans. They had infighting between the two sons, between Yanai and Aristobulus, and they called in the Romans 74 years. And here we are again, 74 years. And can we pass that 75th year? And I think we've learned something as a nation. And by the way, Yom HaAtzmaut really showed that we did learn something as a nation, because there's so many threats of people that were going to come out and ruin the festivities, and it didn't happen. Mm-hmm. So sometimes we do things that, Am Yisrael, you're okay.
Okay, no, that's That's comforting. It's definitely comforting. It's so interesting what you said. It's really interesting. Like people like myself who are blessed to visit on occasion, or even talking to people that came back after Pesach. Like it's a bracha and a klala in the sense that on the one hand, it is kind of life as usual, and you can say to people, "What do you feel there?" And they're like, "I feel nothing. It's Israel. It's amazing." But yet you're right. It's like under the surface, like it could change in a second. So you can't take that for granted. You can't take that for granted. I'll ask on a more of a personal note, and obviously you'll decide how comfortable you are in terms of what you want to share, what you don't want to share. It's obviously your choice. But I always like to ask my guests in terms of a great challenge and a great success, something that you feel comfortable sharing with our audience that was a great challenge for you personally, and what was a great success for you personally.
I think the greatest success, I'm not looking at in a narrow field of view. My greatest success is being able to raise 8 children who went in the way that they were raised, and it's certainly not a given. There's so many people here, even in our yeshuv, who've had kids that have, for lack of a better term, gone off the derech. And I look at my kids and I look at the way they're raising their children, and I look at their hashkafa, and it's a beautiful life. And things that are important to me are important to them. And the fact that we have worked, my wife and myself, for 40 plus years, no, almost 40 years. Sorry about that. Almost 40 years. We built something that we believe is a bar kayama, and we see ourselves as links in a chain. And when you look at your kids, you think, okay, we've done okay. And you can only do that after many, many years of looking back. That is my greatest success.
Beautiful. Are all 8 of your children married?
No. My 15-year-old is not yet married.
Oh, yeah,
We have, my oldest is 35 and my youngest is 15. My 3 youngest are not married. My 5 oldest are married. And they have 11 grandchildren among them, big time.
I mean, we just we were just tremendously blessed with a baby girl right before Pesach. So we have 18 years between our oldest and our youngest now. So it's can relate to that on some level. I'm going to send you an essay online, by the way. I don't know if you're familiar or not with Rav Aaron Lapiansky. If you've heard that name, he's a big Rosh Hashiva in Silver Spring. He has a beautiful essay that I just saw for the first time before Pesach this year. About this idea of the shalshelas, of the transmission of Masorah from generation to generation. I'm going to share it with you offline. I thought it will be incredibly powerful and definitely will resonate based on the comment you just shared. In terms of a challenge, so what would you say about that?
The challenge was in the first few years of our married life. And the challenge was looking at our friends and acquaintances who were living on the other side of the ocean, who were far more, led a life that was much more cushy than our life. They were much more wealthy. They were already working. They were living in, they didn't understand in 1991 what it was to have scuds rained upon you. And
I was in Israel that year. That was my year in yeshiva in Shalavim.
Oh, yeah.
I was there for the Gulf War, yeah.
Your Rabbi Galinsky's daughter lives here?
Oh, no, I didn't know. No. Okay, cool.
Yeah, Hannah. She married a good friend of mine, Chaim. At any rate, so the challenge is looking at them and then looking at yourself and saying, I'm going to keep up what I'm doing, because this life has, I'm sure everybody's life has meaning, but this is the life that I need to live. It was one of the few times that period after you got married that it was difficult to be in Israel. It's not difficult anymore to be in Israel. It's I can't see living anywhere else. Having spent 3 years living in Australia in 2000 and 2002 and seeing what's like in Kutzlar, and I travel not infrequently. I could only live here, and it's not a challenge anymore. It was at one time, but it's not a challenge anymore.
I think it's thank you for sharing that. It's very powerful in the sense that I think many people, not that level of contrast, but I think a great challenge for many people in life is, we'll call, Ezu Ashir Asamech Bechelko, in terms of feeling confident in their life mission and their life circumstances. And there's always easy to look at other people, and whatever it is, it could be spiritual, it could be more in the Gashmias realm. It's one of the great challenges in general, kind of keep one's eyes we say in the blessing that we give our children before Yom Kippur, kind of keeping your eyes kind of on the prize straight ahead. We each here for our own purpose, and we need our own tanaim, our own circumstances. And a lot of people suffer from that, from that comparison shopping.
So, when you're in a boat and the boat is it's moving up and down and you get nauseous, the way not to lose the nausea is to pick a point on the horizon and keep your eye on the point, and it just works that your eyes don't shake as much. If your eyes don't shake as much, then you're not nauseous. And you have to keep looking at the horizon, knowing that that's what I'm looking for. If you look at the near-term gain and you compare it to anybody else's near-term gain, then you're going to make a wrong decision. That's part of what I do has to do with optimization. And if you optimize locally, then I can nearly guarantee you that you will never reach global optimum. You have to always keep your eyes far away and not get locked into local minima or local optima in order to be able to get that, like you said, the prize.
Very nice, beautiful, beautiful. We're gonna wind down with one or two final questions.
Yep.
I love to ask my guests about their hobbies. I know that you're a rocket scientist. I know that you love to study Torah. Anything else in there that maybe people would have guessed about you in terms of hobbies that you really enjoy?
Well, running, but that's not a hobby. That's just unfortunate pain, which one must. My wife does also.
That's because
I like playing the piano. I love playing the piano, and you can tell what mood I'm in by what I'm playing. And if I'm playing some Beatles, then I'm a happy old man. And if I'm playing the Pink Floyd, you can tell that I've had a bad day at work.
Do you play daily?
I do.
Really?
I try. Yeah.
How much time do you have for playing piano?
I just sit down and play a couple of things on a couple of notes, and I'm a happy trooper. Some days more, some days less. What's fun is when I'm playing the piano and one of my kids will sit down on the couch, and then I'll start playing some old stuff and see what he or she recognizes. It's another one of the things that I'm happy that I've passed on to my children, other than an appreciation for solfegic, is classic rock. They're all diehard Queen fans. In fact, my son, who's a Ram in Yeshiva in Akko, I took him when he was in Malay Dumim as a Ram. I took him to a Queen concert, and he didn't tell us Talmidim until the very last day that the reason he didn't come that day is because he went to see Queen.
It's
so there you go.
I'll tell you, I don't know if you follow sports at all.
I do.
Okay, so I was watching. I realize I'm starting to realize how old I am now, because I was watching with my 14-year-old son the Knick game yesterday afternoon.
I was watching too.
And Pat Riley was in the arena there, and my son said to me, "Who is that? Who is that guy? Why are they like? Who is that? Why are they showing it?" And I started explaining to him that he was the coach of the Lakers and the coach of the Knicks, and now he's in charge of the Miami Heat. And it was like he didn't know who Pat Riley was. It was kind of like, that makes perfect sense if you're 14 years old, right? But like, it's like, so this is like, it's just fascinating in terms of things that my kids just have no clue. Like, you realize, like, I'm not as young as I used to be. It's fascinating.
One of my favorite pictures is my son, the Ram in the yeshiva, watching the Giants with his son on his computer.
Yeah.
So it's like when my parents were here in Sukkot, and there was a game that we could watch, and we were sitting in upstairs in the TV room with my father, myself, my son, and his son, 4 generations of Sachers watching the Giants. It was
Nachas, exactly.
Tradition.
100%. I can relate to that 100%. So, final question. This is the Jewish Philanthropy podcast. So we always like to talk a little bit about just the concept of philanthropy, and philanthropy is defined, and we use the term very broadly. People give their time, people give their money, people give their acumen, their skill. There's people give in so many different ways. So, but I'd love to just give you the opportunity to share a little bit about how you viewed tzedakah, how you view kind of the causes that you're most passionate about, anything that you care to share, in that space.
So with tzedakah, we have, my wife and myself, we have 2 rules that we live by. One is that we don't want to give handouts. To quote Layman, who we give to a lot, Beit Shemesh, I'm sure you've heard of it. It's smart philanthropy, which means if you look at the Rambam's the levels of tzedakah, trying to get a person to be able to support himself. We don't like giving little sums of money to various charities who try to give a lot to Layman because we feel that the work that you're doing is very, very important. It's not only addressing the problem, it's remedying the problem. It's very, very important to us. And the other thing that's very, very important to us is aniyei irecha kodmim. And you would be surprised that in a place like Moreshet, you have problems, but you do. And because these are people that you work with, you live with, you daven with, we give a lot of what we give goes to Moreshet. It's two very, very important things that guide us.
Those are two very, very fundamental principles, beautiful principles. I'm involved in the philanthropic space, and I get to interact with a lot of people who do a lot of great things for the Jewish people and even beyond. And it is interesting in the sense that people do, and they do view their charitable giving the way they'd invest in in a company or something like that. You want to feel like there's going to be returns from that. You want to feel that you're putting somebody on your feet, exactly like you're discussing. I always love the conceptual concept, which I'm sure you'll appreciate, that even though there's a lot of concept and construct of aniyei irecha kodmim, that those who are closest take priority. That could be a family member, that can be those who live in your locale. But because we're also, this may be a great point to end on, right? Because we're also connected to Eretz Yisrael, whether we live there or whether we, aspire to be there. So therefore, I think there's the concept, right, that Ani Ircha applies to Ani Eretz Yisrael, meaning that for everybody, no matter where you are, Ani Eretz Yisrael they fall under the rubric of Ircha. So it's a beautiful, I think, expression. I
agree with you. I think it's critical that Achenu Kol Beit Yisrael who live in Chutz La'aretz tie themselves to Israel in any and every way possible, and supporting people that live in Israel. God forbid, people that are just working, eking out a living. But if you have a person who needs tzedakah and that person is in Israel, then I think it firms up your kesher, your connection with Israel, with the Jewish people, much more than if you were giving to a person who's in Muncie or Baltimore, or not that they don't need, but the extra layer that you achieve when you give to someone who lives in Israel, or you give to an organization in Israel, it tightens the connection. We need to tighten as much as possible.
I love that. I'll just add, even from my own perspective, and I took this from our conversation in the sense that the Mesiras Nefesh, right, that you described yourself and your wife in the early years of your marriage, the added level of Mesirut that is demonstrated by those who live in Israel. So those of us who kind of live, a little bit of the easier life have to kind of give credit to that as well. And maybe that's a way for us to tap in also to that Mesirut that's part of being part of connected to Am Yisrael and to Eretz Yisrael. So Rabbi Ari, I want to thank you so much. I know how busy you are, but I'm glad that we were able to find the time to reconnect and to share these insights. I know they're going to be very impactful for those that.
A pleasure.
Thank you. Okay, call to.
All this, bracha,
I mean, thank you so much. We'll be in touch.
Okay.